You're listening to Insurance Matchmaking, your path to health, life, and Medicare coverage with Matt Libby Insurance. And now, sharing his knowledge, here's your host, Matt Libby.
All right, welcome back to Insurance Matchmaking. If you listened last week, you heard Ward Norris from the Putnam County Veteran Service Office. Of course, a lot of times when I get guests, we try to cram two shows in. I wouldn't say cram because we usually get to, I want to say this, I want to say that. Well, let's take another half hour and get the show going. So Ward is back with me here, and we were talking at the end of the show about basically the elder care stuff for veterans and family members, or family members care, as caregivers for their aged veteran. In some of those veterans, they could be my age, but they're older. And actually, it was kind of funny. We talked about their children. I said, your age. And he's like, sometimes older. And I was like, oh, yeah, because I realized my wife is dealing with things, not VA-wise, but those elder care issues with a older parent.
Hey, Matt. Hey, first of all, thanks for having me back on the show. I really appreciate the opportunity just to get to speak to the community. And exactly, just to piggyback off what you're saying, we have a lot of elder veterans who have never done any kind of claim, who have never asked any VA assistance at all, who are in a place where they're needing help, and their children are coming in to help them. And then, like I said, I use the term, and you mentioned the children loosely. They're older because they're older than me a lot of times. But there's a lot of frustration there because they don't understand necessarily that the veteran and how the VA works, and they get frustrated because it takes so long. And it's just, the one thing I want to say is if your parent is a veteran and not receiving VA benefits, if they feel they don't deserve it because they never served in a combat or served in a war, my recommendation is just to encourage them just to check it out. And it will save a lot of frustration, to kind of get ahead of some of these challenges with help that I am seeing today. If they could get more enrolled or get just compensation, get something to do with the VA, that way when the time comes and they need help, we're not starting from scratch.
Right.
It's heartbreaking because it's not a quick process. The children want to see their parents get the help that they deserve. It's just not easy for them because they don't understand the VA and how the VA works, and their parents or their veteran parent never took the time to get enrolled. And I will also say that a lot of times what happens is veterans feel they don't deserve it. I hear it all the time. Well, I didn't serve in combat. I'm like, that's okay. What's your DD-214 say? Do you meet the requirements? Do you serve honorably? Even a general under honorable conditions. Let's apply for something, get you in the system, and then that way you're established, and we don't have to try to do that from scratch when you're needing help at an elderly age.
Yeah, and you said it about deserving it. I remembered, and I'm sure it occurred, during your career. The amount might have been different, but I remember we used to get that. Well, it was a green piece of paper. It had green block, kind of like a spreadsheet. But so I just remember it had green on it, about the color of my coffee cup. But our LES, our leave and earnings statement.
Oh gosh!
And on that leave and earnings statement, there was a little line. It was 50 cents. Every month came out of my check, probably come out of your check. Like I said, it might have been more than 50 cents when you were in Soldier's Home. You actually have, it's like we get Part A of Medicare for free. We're not supposed to say free, but there's no cost as long as you've put in your 40 quarters, equivalent of 10 years of paying into the Social Security and Medicare system, your FICA tax. You paid in that, you are entitled to Part A with no premium, because there are people who have to pay a premium for Part A because they don't, and they can't draw Social Security either because they haven't got the 40 quarters or their spouse doesn't. But you've paid into that, you're entitled to it. Most people don't have a problem applying for their Medicare because hey, I earned that. Short-term and long-term care, some of those benefits, you've earned them and you paid into it because you paid into that Soldier's Home Fund, which we do have veteran homes. And I believe it may be some restrictions. I know spouses can qualify to live in those homes. I actually had a guy I knew. I used to mow his mother's lawn, and the guy was actually, I think he was older than me, and I used to mow her lawn. And this is just a few years ago, not as a kid. It was actually something I had a little side business. He had joined, I think it was the Navy, and got chaptered out in boot camp because he wasn't mentally stable, wasn't mentally fit for the military, so they general discharge sent him home. Well, he had applied for the Ben Atchley home there in Knoxville, and they contacted him and said, "Hey, we have a bed for you." He ended up not taking it. He had a little apartment on in his mom's house that he didn't need the care. He could drive himself around and things like that. But he wasn't all there up in the head. Sure. But it just baffled me that this guy didn't even complete basic training, and he qualified to move into that soldier's home, retirement home.
Yeah, I think it comes down to what's on your DD-214. There are people who are injured in basic training who get out because of their injury.
Yeah.
It's a service-connected injury, but they never apply for any kind of benefit, even though they were injured while in the short service they were in.
Yeah.
And I encourage those people to come in and let's see what you're eligible for.
Those are the ones that really need it, because it was, again, you have a medical condition because of your injury. I think somebody, like you said, they get checked because of an injury, but maybe that's something they've recovered from, so they think, well, I don't need.
Sure. Yeah, the VA recognizes that sometimes you're hurt and sometimes you recover and you get better. And a lot of times what they look at for compensation is three things. They look at an injury that took place during service. They look for that chronic injury with a current diagnosis.
Yeah.
And the last thing is they're looking for what they call a nexus, something that connects that current injury to the injury that took place while in service.
Yeah.
And if they have those three things, and if you have those three things, then we can get you service connected for the injury. And the VA works off this job. I say there's a few prerequisites that would really make a person better at being a veteran service officer. And one of them is having a career in counseling. The other one though is having a law degree, because the VA is very much about evidence and filing a claim that has a strong support or strong evidence to support the claim.
Right. Well, and that's what things. And Ward and I both are in the Veterans of Foreign Wars here in Cookeville. I'm currently the quartermaster, which in civilian terms that's Secretary Treasurer, and he is the senior vice commander, which means if the commander is incapable of conducting a meeting or is unavailable, he's got to put on that commander's hat and act as the commander. But we also have service officers, and some are better than others, but the VFW, American Legion, they do trainings to train people. And what they're trained to do is help people file VA claims. So they do a lot of what Ward does in his day job, but a lot of them, and he said, they almost need to be lawyers because they have to know the ins and outs, and they help a lot of people get their benefits that are maybe getting the runaround or don't know, they're just not filing it correctly.
So what you're talking about, the service organization, service officers, what they really need to be educated and help is point that veteran to the right person to get them that help. And sometimes it's point them to like a county service officer or a state service officer to help them file those claims. And sometimes it's, point them to an organization that may help them meet other needs. We like Operation United Hope. It's a organization here in the Upper Cumberland that helps veterans meet veteran needs. Sometimes it's physical, with clothes and things, and sometimes it's food. What we need those service officers at the different, as you said, VFW, American Legion, is to know the local resources to point those veterans to.
Right. One of the things that I hear a lot and we run into is I can't get any help at the VA because they said I make too much money, or, well, I didn't serve in combat. Can you address some of those? Because I know there are different benefit levels. Not just we have different disability levels, but there's different benefit levels based on means and service.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. There's a lot of veterans who just make too much money to get enrolled in the VA. And there's two ways you can be enrolled in VA healthcare. One is what you're talking about. It's based off your income, and it's you and your spouse's gross income minus unreimbursed medical expenses. If you exceed a certain threshold, you make too much money. The other way is to be service connected. Right. When you're service connected, they waive that financial piece. You still give them the information, but they waive it because now you're service connected. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times what we found is that if you're a veteran, you make too much money to get into VA healthcare, we can just file a claim, and you would be surprised what injuries you may have sustained while in service. A lot of times people forget. Mm-hmm. I had a guy in my office a couple weeks ago, and he was sitting funny, and I said, tell me about your service, because, I'm just genuinely interested in people.
Yeah.
I was in the Army. I was several years, best time of my life. And he said, told me a little bit about the things he had done. I was like, I've done some of that. Yeah, this is a great time. And he's sitting funny, and I'm like, well, did you ever get injured in the service? He's like, no, it's the best time of my life. And I said, okay, well, I said, not injured at all? He's like, no. And I said, well, okay, can I ask you a question? He said, yeah. I said, why are you sitting funny? Well, I hurt my back. And I said, well, what happened? Well, I was in the service, and I got injured. And I was like, oh, so you hurt your back in the service? Well, I guess I did. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about that, because one, it's probably in your medical records. He said he went to the hospital. Two, it's still a chronic issue. And I said, are you seeing somebody? But yeah, I got to see a doctor about it every once in a while to get treatments. And I said, bring that medical record in and let's file a claim, because I said, that's probably something we get you service connected for. Hearing, tinnitus. Oh my goodness. That ringtone in your ear that's been there since you were in the service, you can get service connected for it. I mean, it's not much, but it's something. But once you're service connected, then we can get you into VA healthcare. I get a lot of people asking about hearing aids. As people get older, like, hearing aids are not cheap. No. I don't have hearing aids, but what they tell me, they're very expensive.
Which is another one of the benefits of the Medicare Advantage plans. They're not free, but they do help you pay for them. So, if you're not going to be able to if you're unable to get hearing aids through the VA, and it's one of those, I better not say any names, but I do recommend to not go to the different chains, the ones that send you the postcards and say, come in and get a free hearing test, but they're going to sell you a $5,000 or $10,000 hearing aid. You probably could go to Sam's and buy the same one for $1,000. And I say they're not cheap. And I don't know if you're aware of this, I always recommend if you live near a Sam's or a Costco, which we do have one. We have a Sam's here in Cookeville. Mm-hmm. And they have a hearing center. They will do hearing tests for free. And the people who work in the hearing department are not commissioned salespeople. They have no incentive to sell you a certain hearing aid. So they will test your hearing and recommend what level of hearing aid you might need. Now, the other is with the Medicare Advantage plans, and I think they pretty much every one of them do, they use a service called True Hearing. It's TRU, and in hearing. You can Google that online, and there is somebody local that does it. I'm not sure who the local provider is. It could be and it may even be the hearing center through the hospital. But that's who you use with the Medicare Advantage to get your hearing aids for. And generally, it's a copay amount, so it could be $299, $499, $899 but it's like an $899 copay on a $10,000 hearing aid's a lot better than signing a payment plan for a $10,000 hearing aid. Mm-hmm. So again, that's one of those benefits you can get from an Advantage plan that maybe you're not getting from the VA. Mm-hmm. Or in TRICARE, and actually I think TRICARE may cover. Well, actually, they may cover hearing aids under 65. It's kind of one of those. TRICARE works like a Medicare supplement. It picks up the part that Medicare doesn't pay, but because Medicare in itself does not cover hearing care. That's what we always say. Medicare does not cover routine dental, vision, and hearing, and that's why a lot of times you'll hear me talk about a DVH, a dental, vision, and hearing plan. And there's all kinds out there because those are usually extra benefits in Advantage plan. Or if you have a Medigap plan, but you want those benefits, that's something separate. And we're actually up on the break, so we'll be back here in just a minute and finish out. And I'll try to give Ward a little bit more time to talk.
Hi, this is David Price, your local Twin Lakes Business Solution Consultant. When was the last time you got more for less? That's exactly what you can get from Twin Lakes with our new faster speed, lower price broadband plans. I'd love to show you what a fiber connection can do for your business and show you our new plans with a free, no obligation consultation. Call today at 931-476-2151 or visit us online at twinlakes.net.
Join Habitat Restore at their pop-up donation event every second Saturday of each month at First National Bank in Sparta. The Habitat team will be there ready to go to receive your donations. So don't miss an opportunity to declutter and make a difference at First National Bank in Sparta with the Habitat Restore pop-up donation event every second Saturday of the month.
And now, back to Insurance Matchmaking with Matt Libby Insurance.
All right, and we are back for the last segment of the show. We ran up on the break there, and I told Ward, I said, okay, I'll give you a chance to talk here. So you had a question you wanted to pose to me, and
I did, Matt. I just maybe to change things up just a little bit, but it still kind of hits in the realm of veteran and hits in the realm of insurance. But a veteran, say a veteran retires, he has dependents. Say the dependent turns 21, is not in school. At that point, that dependent is no longer eligible for TRICARE or any of the other insurance plans that veteran has for his family. What are some recommendations, or what would you tell?
Okay, yeah, and I do deal with situations not necessarily veterans, but just kids aging off their parents' insurance,
Sure.
But especially, like you said, maybe they're not in college, or maybe they're part-time college or going to community college, which won't qualify. You have to be a full-time student to keep your veterans benefits. Kind of weird. It was the Affordable Care Act. You cover your kids on your insurance till they're 26, even if they've married. I just, that one baffles me. And I dealt with having to keep up with the kids having their paperwork from the college proving that they were enrolled in college so they could stay on after past 18. But with the Affordable Care Act, there's a couple of ways that we can get those young people insured. One is a lot of times they've been carried on their parents' insurance, but they're earning income on their own. They're working, like I said, especially if they're going to school part-time, they may be working part-time or close to full-time to help pay for going to community college, so they don't qualify. So they have an income, and depending on that income, they could qualify for the tax credits, what we call the advanced premium tax credits. So currently, I'm going to say, let's say $16,000. It's $15,000 and something. So if their income is over that amount on their own, they can apply for Affordable Care Act plan and get the tax credit. And when you're just barely eligible for it based on your income, you're going to get the maximum. You're going to get the maximum savings. In fact, you can even probably get a silver plan with a zero premium. And the reason I say the silver plan, because if you're below 250% of the poverty level, you have to be at 100% to qualify. So that's where that $16,000 comes in. Up to about $23,000 is $150. Somewhere even close to $30,000, a young person could still qualify to get some what they call the cost sharing reduction and save on a silver plan. Wouldn't necessarily be a zero premium at that point, but instead of having a $5,000 deductible, you might have a $1,500 deductible and $4,000 maximum out of pocket instead of $9,000. I'm just throwing kind of random numbers out there. It's not exact, but yes, you can. Your maximum out of pocket could be over $9,000. That's one way. The other is if you're still claiming that adult child as a dependent, they're still living in your home. You're paying their bills. You've been paying everything, and they may even be working a little part time. But if their income is low enough that they could still file their income tax and file that I'm being claimed as a dependent. You can basically what happens there is you apply for Affordable Care Act they can apply, but they're being claimed as a dependent. So based on your income, they could get a tax credit. Now, of course, the ones that have enough income on their own to qualify are better off than the parent, because generally, if you're claiming your kids, hopefully, you and your spouse are probably working and making a decent income, and that's your only dependent now. Or you could have younger kids at home, and if you have younger kids at home, that's actually going to help, because the bigger your family is, the higher your income can be, and still qualify for a tax credit. So that's a couple ways that they could possibly get insurance. I had a young lady that had contacted me. I haven't talked about it, I think, on the last show, or the show that was on the last Saturday, as we're recording this, so it's not going to be that relative and time-wise. Called me up on the 4th of July week. Well, 1st of July was Tuesday. And with Affordable Care Act, just like with Medicare, it always starts on the 1st of the month. So as long as you apply up until the last day of the month, your insurance can start the 1st of the next month. I was able to get her enrolled for the 1st of August with a zero premium plan based on her income for a zero premium to her. It's like a $300 and some premium, but because of her tax credit, it covered the premium. If she'd have called me on Monday, she'd be on insurance now instead of waiting for it to start in August
1st. Yep.
So it's very, it's like and don't put things off. That's one of the things coming up too. Even if you didn't apply and hadn't thought about it, this applies a lot. This is maybe not veteran related, but if you are basically in food service or retail, or you don't qualify for insurance through your employer, or you didn't fill out your paperwork correctly, I don't qualify. Because a lot of times, especially service workers that work on tips, I always tell them, just claim a little bit more of your tips and get over that threshold, and then you can get the plans. Because it's like they'll fill it out and they make, I don't want to tell them I make $13,000. If I tell them I make $18,000, it'll cost me too much. And so they try to lowball it, and then lowballing it costs you. You have to have enough income to get the tax credits. It's kind of the latest I heard. There is a special enrollment if you're between that 100 and 150%. So there's a 150% income special enrollment. I heard that's going to end in August. It was a temporary thing, and it's not going to be renewed for next year. So if you are in that lower income and just thought maybe you don't, and it doesn't cost you anything to check with us to see if you qualify. So that's not just for dependent, but and again, or you have that college student that has the summer job or works part-time during school and works full-time during the summer, and they're filing their taxes, they may qualify. And we could still get them health insurance even. We don't want them to wait until they need the health insurance. We want them to get it, and have it. That's why it's insurance.
What's the old saying? It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
Yeah. The other thing is, I don't remember who told me this, but when you smell smoke, it's too late to buy fire insurance. And it's the same thing with your health care. You can't wait until, or people, they'll buy a cancer plan because
they've been diagnosed,
or they think something's going on. You see, the problem is with a cancer plan is it won't pay out in the first 30 days. In fact, actually, I was listening to a training this week, and this guy was an insurance agent, but sold himself a cancer plan, and then went and got his checkup and was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and the plan's not going to pay anything because it was within 30 days. And it's like, why did you wait after 30 days to go to the doctor? Well, I didn't think anything, because he didn't think anything was wrong.
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of people don't think about is like, I don't need a cancer plan. I feel pretty good. Nobody that ends up with cancer thought, I'm going to get cancer in the next couple of months. I better get something to cover it.
And what you're talking about, waiting until it's too late, or not thinking I'm ever going to need insurance type things. One of the other things that happens a lot at the office is I get a lot of surviving spouses who come in, and a lot of times it seems like the veteran who passed never thought about themselves dying and what's going to happen to their spouse. What would you recommend for veterans who are, because the VA has a life insurance program and you pay a lot for it, based off your age.
Yeah.
So is there a recommendation that you'd say to someone, and that would give your spouse something rather than them coming and saying, how am I going to pay for my house? He left me with nothing.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, we have what we call final expense life insurance, and there's some plans you can go down as low as $2,000 of coverage. And those little postcards you get for a nickel a day or whatever, yeah, but you're only going to get $2,000 or $5,000. Or it's, that's for a 45-year-old and you're 65. So it's going to be more. It's kind of a bait and switch. But we have final expense plans depending on your age. You can get all the way up to $50,000. Most of them will usually cap out at about $30,000. And again, usually most people aren't going to go that high because it's going to be expensive. And we have two types of plans on that. Well, I say kind of 3 levels. We have what we call same day or next day coverage. So you're in relatively good health. You answer a few health questions and pay the premium, and your insurance is in place. You may have some, I'd say minor, but not real terrible health conditions. You could get what's called a graded plan. And so what those do is they prorate what they'll pay out. So if you have a $10,000 plan, you pass away 6 months after you get the plan, it may only pay out $2,500. Or a lot of plans, like usually if it's in the first year, they're going to pay back what premiums you've paid plus some interest. So you're not throwing the money away. That's the thing I try to get across to people is you'll get the money. You'll get some, you're not going to lose the money you paid in. People, I'll just get a savings account. So okay, great. How long is it going to take you to save $10,000? But if you pay $50 a month, you could have the $10,000,
less than 20 years
in a couple months. So, and then there's what we call guaranteed issue, and that's because you have some major health. And again, those plans basically aren't going to pay anything other than paying back the premium with interest in the first 2 years or 2 to 3 years, depending on the plan. So there is coverage you can get. The younger you are and the better health you are, the less it's going to cost.
The better rate.
Yeah. So, and like I said, if you're planning on getting cremated and maybe going in the VA cemetery, okay, $2,000 to $5,000 might be enough. But the other thing you said about the spouse losing the house, because one of the things that happens when that spouse passes away is their Social Security goes away too, or their military pension, or there's a lot of income that's not coming in anymore. The other thing is maybe you got your burial and everything taken care of, but you don't want your spouse to have to sell their house for the whatever they can get because they have to hurry and sell it to be able to move, and move in with an adult child. Whereas you can cushion that. They can take time, wait for a decent offer on the house to sell, to move, or use that money maybe to move, now sell the house and move in assisted living because they're by themselves, or sell the house to move across the country to live with their adult child, whatever.
I think if I'm reading you right, what you're saying is this has to be planned. This isn't just something you can just kind of throw together on the fly, which feels like a lot of times what happens when people will come in, and the VA does offer assistance for situations. They do offer pension, but that's a needs-based pension.
Right.
They also offer some, compensation because, they if the veteran passes from something service-connected. So, but it's not something that is going to fix your problems immediately, is what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah, in life insurance, you can get that claim back pretty quickly. And a lot of times, the funeral home will file it for you. So, anyway, believe it or not, we're out of time. So again, until next week, stay tuned to Grace 107.7. Tune in every Saturday at 10 for Insurance Matchmaking. And remember, at Matt Libby Insurance, we can cover you from head to toe. It doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg.
You've been listening to Insurance Matchmaking with Matt Libby, your path to health, life, and Medicare coverage with Matt Libby Insurance.